All right, what's up, everyone? MK Tom Brady here, and tonight I'm joined by a special guest, M2Dave. We're still doing our usual podcast that we do. I know it's been a couple of weeks since we've been able to get together. Just scheduling just hasn't worked out for all of us. But on this podcast, there are five of us, and it's kind of difficult when you have five people to really kind of get everyone's opinion out there, as you have a limited amount of time and so many people that have to get their opinion in. So maybe one by one, we'll get each of the co-hosts on the podcast on here as a guest, so we can do their opinion one by one. Again, we're still doing our normal podcast. This is just kind of like a special occasion because it's been a while since we've all got together. I want to welcome M2Dave, and Dave, how you doing tonight?
Doing well, very well. Thank you for having me.
All right, so obviously, the elephant in the room. It's been, we've been waiting for, it seems like forever for some news on MK11, and it really isn't until now, until pretty much the final shoe was dropped, and we kind of look at it like it is what it is. Probably nothing is coming. We waited through the movie, which was the 2 year anniversary of the game. No announcement, nothing. In between then and now, we got a small update, which pretty much only kind of touched Shiva. E3 weekend happened, nothing. Pro Series concluded, nothing. And then the week after the Pro Series happened, which we figure there's a Tuesday and a Thursday, big games in the video game world where maybe something will get announced, nothing happened. So now it's pretty obvious this is the game we're going to get. So looking at it, how do you see the game as it's probably going to be for the next 2 years? And, your thoughts on NRS pretty much unable to change it.
How much time do we have? I promised myself it would be an hour. I think the problems with the game is, let me just be fair, because sometimes I think you and I, we have been accused of being overly critical, excessively critical. And I do want to be fair to NRS, to the Q&A, to the Q&A staff, to the producers, to the gameplay people, to everybody. I think looking at it just from a basics, perspective, just like an overall view, there's nothing about the game that's broken. The game is more functional than ever, and I know you've been around for a long time. Because I mean, if you look back in MK9, do I even have to talk about some of the glitches and some of the infinite combos early on in the game's lifespan? So just it's just nonsense. Blocking didn't work properly. Meter drain glitches. From that standpoint, the game is just it was a very like it was a very broken game. MK11 is nothing really like that. Everything kind of functions the way it's supposed to. With MK11, I think the bigger issue is that a lot of the gameplay aspects, in my opinion, are just poorly designed. We have been complaining about the wake up system for a long time, about fatal blows for a long time, about breakaways for a long time. What has been changed? Really, almost nothing. Maybe just a little bit, some of this tiny stuff. Some a little bit has been changed, but overall, not much. I don't see the game surviving, and what I mean by that, I'm sure there will always be some people who play it, but I'll give it like 6, 7, 8 months, especially people like Sonic Fox, um, Ninja Killer, Tweety, Stamij. If those people drop the game or they don't enter in the upcoming tournaments, I think the game will suffer immensely and ultimately die.
Why is it you think there hasn't been any real type of an update? I don't really think there will be one. Why do you think NRS? Normally, their changes are done in year two. And their major change in pretty much every game outside of MK9, which it was a different day and time with the way they
Yeah,
coded
for
things,
sure.
the way things technology was. But ever since done, they've always kind of made a significant shift in the way things are done in the second year of the game. Why do you think there was no change? Was it COVID related? And now that things are no longer COVID related, why do you think anything got done? Like nothing got done?
Well, I do think it's arguably primarily COVID related because obviously I don't work. I'm not part of the NRS staff. I don't know what's going on inside, but I have heard rumors that they had to lay people off, and that probably affected how much they could work, how much they could update Mortal Kombat 11, and because obviously everything you do costs a lot of money, right? You need the staff, you need people to test the game, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure COVID has had a major impact on their ability to update the game. Um, but on the other hand, they've had their chances, even previously, and they've done very little to tackle the issues that you and I and many other people have been complaining about. Again, wake ups, too many options, breakaway, horrible mechanic. Nobody likes to do their best combo that they've been practicing for hours, only for somebody to break away from it 3-4 times a match and get comboed. Fatal blows, armor shouldn't even be there. Um, I don't know, man. Like it's to me, it's just kind of strange. I don't expect it to overhaul the game entirely, which at that point you might as well just be waiting for the next Mortal Kombat game. But probably also the new project. I mean, they have to move on, right? So they have to work on the next Marvel game, which everybody suspects is what they're working on right now. So I'm sure there are a couple of reasons, but I would imagine the primary one is probably COVID.
For me, I think it comes down to I don't think there's going to be a Combat Pack 3, which we'll get to later. Without a Combat Pack 3, they don't have a money-making product to go along with whatever kind of overhaul they would normally make. So I think it comes down to people aren't really satisfied. We don't want to overhaul the game that's millions of dollars in development that we're just not going to spend. And if we do something small, they're not going to be happy with that. So I think they made the decision that no change is probably the best thing, rather than do something small, which doesn't change much, which is just going to cause a bigger uproar. So that's why I think they're done with the game, and that's why I think nothing is coming out. I want to go back to when Street Fighter V got their overhaul, and a lot of people were talking about, look at what Capcom did. And, they continue to make changes, and Namco's made changes. But a lot of people always said, well, look how long Tekken's been out. Look how long Street Fighter V has been out. Mortal Kombat 11 hasn't been out even 2 years yet, or barely 2 years. Now it's clear we're moving on to year 3. And I believe we'll go past year 3 into it's the 4th year of the game's life. No changes yet. Nothing on the horizon for the game. And, I'm just curious, what about all those people who kept saying, look, we're going to get content. The NRS community is impatient. Because we hear this all the time. The NRS community is impatient. Nothing ever gets changed. And your thoughts on even the creative director, Ed Boon, tweeting out that a meme about how entitled people are. And I really think it's a bad look when the creative director comes out and calls paying customers entitled. Because when you are a paying customer, you are entitled to a certain level of quality with the product. And if you don't feel like you've gotten it, you should be able to voice that opinion without being called entitled. And I feel like content creators for God knows how long have been talking about NRS community is never happy. They're not satisfied. Look at all the content that they've given us. But if you look at it, I would say this game, outside of DLC characters, has received next to nothing as far as content goes. I mean, am I wrong on this, or how do you see this?
I mean, we're gonna have to address the elephant in the room. Look, and some people will not like me saying this, but I know your subscribers are honest people and they can handle the truth. When you have certain people, like certain people, and Big Deep was one of them. That's just a fact. He literally already said what Boone said. What, like 5-6 days ago? I know you made a video on it, and I don't need to explain it because your subscribers already know. Certain people have a financial interest to promote the game, even if the game has major flaws. Again, just throwing it out there because I'm sorry, it's the truth. If you can handle it, that's too bad. But some people just do that, and that's okay. Like, I hope content creators, commentators make as much money as possible from MK11. I hope they become rich, as far as I'm concerned. But it doesn't mean we should be taking their opinions seriously. Because again, when you have an incentive to do something, you may not get a straightforward answer. You may not get a sincere answer. So obviously, with that said, I think Boone could be parroting with some of what he's heard from these content creators. Like, I know some of them have a large following, and again, God bless them. I'm trying to like demean anybody or ruin anybody's you know uh, financial interest or even if that's livelihood. Again, God bless them. I sincerely and seriously mean that. But why should we take their opinions seriously when they clearly make money from it, and it might not be in their best interest to criticize the game to such an extent like you and I do, because it may harm them financially speaking. I mean, am I being, Tom? You tell me. I mean, we talk all the. Am I being unfair when I say that, or I don't
No,
think I am.
I mean that's true, and really I think what has happened throughout the course of Mortal Kombat 11's life is you have people who say, listen, we bought this product based on a number of promises that were made to us. One, but this game is going to be supported longer than ever. I think this is the least supported game in NRS history. Outside of maybe MK9, which pretty much got all its content within the first 6 months. I also think that the promise of this is going to be, and this is why I'm really against when people in the fighting game world that are like a major part of a studio say things like this that don't exactly know what they're saying. It's going to be the return to footsies, the return to neutral. That was never really the case. Mortal Kombat's never really been a traditional neutral heavy game in the traditional sense of the word neutral and footsies. So when you say it's going to be a neutral heavy game with a return to footsies, and you look at Cabal flying across the screen, Jackie flying across the screen, Fujin flying across the screen, like all kind of stuff, Setran, and you're like, where are the footsies? Even day one, return to footsies, Gearus day one the way he was with and everything. I mean, so much of this stuff was literally the very contrary to what people were being told. And then the creative variation, how they were gonna, how they could change the game with, oh, if we need to, we can make moves that are 2 slots, 1 slot, moves that are 1 slot, 2 slots. We can buff 2 slot moves to be worth 2 slots. We can take moves that are default and make them not default and vice versa. Like all these promises. I mean, don't you think that as a paying customer to say, I expect you to live up to a lot of these things that were used as the way to market the game. I really feel like NRS kind of got away with that, right? They kind of said, we're going to promise you X, Y, Z, deliver none of it to you, and then have people say, be grateful that you got anything. And people actually paid for this, almost $200 for the whole package, and they certainly didn't get what they felt they were paying for. Shouldn't they have a right to kind of voice their displeasure?
I mean, you literally just mentioned it. Like, entitlement means like the community or many members of the community want something for free. And that's not the case at all. I'll be more than content to pay for another Combat Pack 3, even as somebody who really dislikes the game. Like, it's not a matter of being entitled, like, to the extent, we want these people to work themselves to death so we can have something. No. I hope, again, they release a Combat Pack 3, and I'm sure we will all be very happy, at least I will be, to pay for their content that they worked hard for. So I don't know what, again, this boosts, and I know, again, just like with Big D, he's mentioned that there was a huge backlash with, the community coming after him, and again, please take it, be responsible, direct your criticism in a polite manner. Same thing with Ed Boon. But no, I agree with you. Like, how can we feel entitled when we're paying for this stuff? Like, nobody gives us the stuff free. We don't expect to get it for free. It's just silly. It's just very, very silly, in my opinion.
I want to talk about the content that we actually received in this game and the direction they chose to go. They say that they listen to people and they take the criticism under advisement, but this is kind of weird in my opinion because if you look at, for example, from the very beta of the game, beta got launched and, everybody's playing. And of course, Sonic Fox and several others weighed in on some of the issues. And these issues were breakaway was a problem. They didn't like it. They also felt the mechanic not only was a problem with, people getting knocked down and getting up and combo you, but, hey, well, some characters could abuse this by they don't ever launch you, so you're losing 30, 40% guaranteed, so you never get to break away from them. Well, they always get to break away from you, that it could be a balance issue. They brought up the wake-up system, how, it feels like you knock somebody down and you have to be scared for your life when they're on the ground. Fatal blow, all these issues that got brought up during the beta. And yet from the beta to day one of all the issues that people addressed, the only thing that really got touched was, hey, could you nerf Scarlet, and all this zoning stuff? Why do you think that was? Like, why, out of everything that people talked about, was it just a balance issue of a beta character that got addressed and not the big issues that people were complaining about throughout the course of the beta?
Well, I think they've been addressing balance issues since the beta. And that's what most of the patching seems to be concerned about. I don't have to document the changes. People who have been playing the game know exactly what I'm talking about. From nerfs to Aaron Black to, some nerfs to Geras, etc., etc. Some of the changes that deal with the meta are very, very conservative. To me, almost unacceptably conservative. Because you have, again, the wake-up system, which you talk about zoning. I'm a zoning player. You guys have seen the video that Tom and Rio and many others have uploaded, quote unquote, my evil moment, if you will. I want to run away, I'm in a zone. But the wake up system, when I get in, is so bad where you let people have 6, 7 options, including the, wake up fatal blows, wake up buttons, etc., etc. I just don't understand what they were thinking. Like it seems like they always think in extremes, NRS does. We either have MKX wake-ups where you literally have no options unless you have meter, or you have MK11 wake-ups where you have too many options. Can we get, to use the word, balance here, please, in the next Mortal Kombat game, where you have a normal wake-up system? Yes, you should be getting rewarded when you knock somebody down. And I was listening to your last podcast with King and King Jr., both of whom addressed this issue. It's very simple. When I'm in a corner, when I have you corner, you're on the ground, I should not be backing off. It's completely ridiculous. I've earned that position. You, when you knock me down, have earned that position. Again, that's just one example that they should have attempted to fix, and they haven't, and maybe never will.
Yeah. So when the game came out, here's what I thought was interesting. So not much changed from the beta mechanics-wise. Same problems with the wake-up system. Same problems with fatal blows.
It's like a broken. I'm sorry. They did fix like the broken fatal blows. They were like, they were like saved that armor. What on the second, third frame? Like a football just spam a fatal blow to
they did eventually address that, and
yeah. But that was like, that was broken. That was definitely broken.
When the game first launched, though, fatal blows were still very problematic. Had armor almost immediately.
Yeah, that was a major issue because you could do like down one poke or even on block, and then again certain like gears, right? Down one, what was it? What was the pre-patch down one? I don't remember. It was like -3, -4. I don't remember. And then even if you retaliate just a little, even with your own low poke, fatal blow. So that would literally freeze you. So the game was supposed to be about footsies. That was literally the most anti-footsie thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, but
it was so crazy.
The game get launched, it had initially 2 variations. And this is really, I think NRS really gets let off the hook for a lot of these issues. Almost as if they never happened. So I want to remind everyone out there exactly the process in which MK11 went through. So MK11 was supposed to be about, and if you look at the way the game is designed, it should be about options. And look at all the options they have, where we are now with the quote unquote customized variation system. MK11 comes out, you have 2 variations. But keep in mind, with just 2 variations, that's only, 6 pretty much, or 5 custom moves you had to choose from, because some variations only have 2 moves you can choose from your customized loadout. Because some moves are 1 slot, some are 2. And several characters in the game are seen as one of their 2 variations are not very good. Hence, you really can't play them at a competitive level. Now, Aaron Black, his second variation was completely garbage next to his first variation, where he had the safety meterlessly. He had the damage, where the other variation didn't have. He had the zoning and the anti-zoning. He pretty much had everything in one variation, making variation 2 completely useless. Sub-Zero Thin Ice was called the quote-unquote wrong variation when you had Dead of Winter, and several characters fit into this mold. So the game gets launched with all the problems that people talked about in the beta never addressed. At this point, Fatal Blow's the same, Breakaway the same, Wake Up System the same. And then, while in the beta you were able to at least customize your variations, game comes out and hey, you only got 2 variations per character, and so many of the characters can't even use one of their 2. So the game was launched off the bat extremely limited, was it not? Extremely limited, and still having all the problematic things that people complained about from even before day one. Is this not true?
Absolutely, and also a lot of the content, really aside from the characters and maybe some stages, is really content that was already in the game. You talk about customizable variations. Up to the month when 16-bit had already told the community that customizable variations were going to be allowed, people had already been using them, prior to that. Like, again, once she made an announcement, they were like, yeah, okay, let's just use it. Let's have tournaments. Let's hold it. Let's hold tournaments of customized variation, because I know Slayer was hosting some, if I'm not mistaken, and you were participating, I think in some of them, or at least casually you were playing. And so those are moves. Again, that's a component of the game that's always been in the game. I don't really consider it extra content. We're just kind of limited. We're not to use it in ranked. We're not to use it in casuals, because no matter what, we'll play against you, because you're wasting people's times, especially when they're trying to prepare for tournaments. So that's kind of the way I see it. Again, characters aside, the content is actually not as much as people give, at least some people give NRs credit for.
Speaking of content, something that's very popular in games like Tekken, Virtua Fighter, is being able to customize your character's look, right? That's a big thing, right? Skins, accessories for your character. That's pretty much standard, right? In every game. And normally in fighting games, you are able to earn these rewards through fighting other people in game modes. It doesn't matter what game modes you're fighting in. Sometimes different rewards for different modes, but all of these modes involve you fighting another person. It's a fighting game. The purpose is to fight another person. In Mortal Kombat 11, the way you unlock everything is to not play another human, but to sit there and play Towers of Time and the Crypt. You had people day one who spent tens and tens of hundreds of hours in the Crypt and on Towers to unlock stuff. But in every other fighting game, the way you unlock things is through playing another person. From day one, Mortal Kombat 11 was extremely poor in just about every possible scenario. The variation system was a complete failure, as several characters couldn't even use both variations. Content-wise, as far as being able to customize your character, you spend your days in AI battle, Towers of Time, Crypt, all this kind of stuff. Unlocking, heads for Shang Tsung's Island. All this stuff. All this stuff is pretty much all single player content, and you really can't do any of this by fighting another person. So really, as far as content wise, day one, the game was, and also keep in mind, some people bought the game, and the original day one towers were ridiculously hard, and the qualifications were absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, of course, they're used to MKX, where you pay $20, you unlock the crypt. In Injustice 2, you could buy source crystals and use these source crystals to pretty much purchase anything you want in the game. Mother boxes for stuff, multiple skins that your character has, you can do all that. So, some people actually paid $50 to buy the max amount of time crystals that you could get, only to find out that you can buy nothing but what they allow you to. The original shop had half the options you had, and you had to wait every day. And I think the store didn't even refresh as fast. So from day one, the game was a complete debacle on so many areas, but nobody says anything because it was a new game. About
I think for Injustice 2, if I'm not mistaken, you can actually unlock everything just by playing online. Am I mistaken about that or not?
Just by playing humans, just by playing people, you were able to earn source crystals, which you could use to buy anything. Skins were not limited. So skins and gear were different. The skins were the base skin, and the gear was kind of like the accessory on top. You could earn mother boxes by playing, earn source crystals to buy gear. In MK11, you can kind of sort of do that, but I mean, you just spend all day sacrificing stuff to the shrine in the crypt or that kind of stuff. You're not actually earning the reward, and all the currency you get is pretty much forcing you to kind of gamble in single player mode, whether you're at the shrine or whether you're, just refreshing the store, and crap, I didn't get what I wanted. Let me wait another day or two until the store refreshes. And that's pretty much.
Because I remember when I was playing Injustice 2, I was using Reddit for a long time, and man, I really want those low gun shots, and I really, really want to unlock them. And eventually I played, and I unlocked them eventually. So I think everything should be unlockable with you just playing either online or even offline another human being. Because you're obviously putting in the work into the game. You're enjoying the game. I understand why, towers of time are being, shut down our throats for no reason. I just really don't understand it. I just want to let people understand, like, a lot of the stuff, like, when I'm on the podcast with Rio, Crimson, you, and Zyfox, I really don't get to talk some of the, some of the fluff, at least that I would consider fluff. I really do actually care about this stuff. And sometimes, the podcast is so much about the gameplay that we can't really discuss this stuff. But that's really been bothering me for a long, long time is, look, I want to play the game online, and I want to be able to unlock everything for my, 8-10 hours a week that I'm playing. And the fact that you can't is, again, another major issue. It's not necessarily related to the gameplay, but it is an issue nonetheless to me.
All right, so people always say MK11 has given us more content than we can possibly imagine. More content than we've ever received in all of NRS history. And this is a complete joke. This, in my opinion, is the worst Mortal Kombat game as far as content goes. Because while we have characters, there's a reason why when you get 3 characters, 2 weeks later, you have people tweeting, the game is boring, where's the new content? And this is what leads the illusion that you guys out here who paid a total of $165 if you bought the game from day one all the way through, that you somehow are never happy. This is the biggest bunch of BS ever really put out there, that you guys who paid this money are just not happy. Because the truth is, they're putting these characters in a game that has not changed much since the very first day it has been released. Because the major changes to the game, the characters are not changes to the game, they are just new characters into the game. The game itself, third variations were always possible since day one. when they made third variations. I know when they made Avalanche, for 2 weeks before we got third variations, once we knew what those third variations were going to be, I was already playing Creeping Ice and Arctic, doing it before we even got it. Aftermath, when the Aftermath came out, armor breaks. Armor breaks, to me, even imbalance the game even further, because you have now some characters who combo you on the ground and you can never break away. Now, some characters like Cabal, who that you can never break away from them ever, so they combo you regardless for maximum damage. And half of the characters that even got armor breaks can't even use them, and the rest of the characters didn't even get one. That really wasn't anything that changes the game. And then the big thing, customizable variations. Again, once they announced customized variations, for that month, Cetrion players were using Tornado, Teleport, Ground Pound. Nothing changed. So literally, people were playing Ultimate a month before we even got Ultimate. And then, and honestly, a lot of people were playing Ultimate from day one. So literally, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 11 was actually possible from the very first day you got the game. If you wanted to play Cetrion, I mean, obviously, they changed a few mechanics like the Tornado, which was an armor break, etc., and they did tweak a few moves. But overall, you were able to play this from day one. If you wanted to play Sub-Zero with Rising Ice, Creeping Ice, and whatever, you could have done this. You could have Slide, whatever. You could have made all of these variations from day one. And so the biggest content you guys got for your money was, hey guys, the way you could have played the game the very first day you bought it, we're finally going to give you the privilege of doing this in all game modes. That, in my opinion, is the biggest slap in the face of every consumer who bought Mortal Kombat 11. That they're basically saying, we're giving you something new. They're basically reselling you something, or not resell, because they're selling you Ultimate, but they're basically saying, by unlocking something that we've given you since day one, we're giving you a treat and you should be grateful. And to get away with this is mind-blowing to me. And then to have people who are unhappy with this and say they aren't changing the game enough, because there are those that are going to say, oh, they changed the meta. The jump in meta, they tried to change it. It didn't change at all, because they didn't change the problem, which is you really can't stop people from jump kicking the bejesus out of you. And the wake up system meta didn't really change at all, because while they got rid of the intermediate timing of the delay when you knock somebody down, the problem was you had 8 wake up options, and now the problem is they got rid of 1, so you have 7 wake up options. So nothing really changed throughout the game. They tried to change the jump meta. The jump meta didn't change, regardless of what they tried to do. They tried to change the fatal blow meta. The fatal blows, sure, the armor doesn't activate right away, but fatal blows are used just as much now as they were day one. They're just as effective now as they were day one, and just as many fatal blows go unpunished now as they did day one. Wake up system changed. There are so many people, regardless of what they changed, who still get up with wake up buttons, wake up jump, wake up forward roll, wake up everything. And the community justifies it as, oh, time your meaty better. And I've never seen so many apologists constantly blame everybody but NRS for horrible content as far as how they chose to update the game. How do you see this? What is your opinion on how NRS has chosen
let me
the
say,
game?
we have to, if there's anything that I want your subscribers or even casual viewers to get from this conversation, it is the following, and please listen. Traditional archetypes, or archetypes of any sense, of any possibility, the game doesn't have them. because the because the game's gameplay features do not allow archetypes to exist. For example, you have a wake up system. You can't have this wake up system and expect strong Orky characters to exist in this game. It's literally impossible. It's just impossible. You can't have strong combo characters. Again, I know many of you like MKX, you want to do long combos. You can't have long combos in this game, and half the time people are breaking your combos and punishing you for it. How can you have combos? How? How can you have strong zoning when all the zoning characters have command grabs? Like, what is going on? Like, what is happening? So RoboCop keeps getting better and better for all the wrong reasons, because he's getting more command grab, getting more command grab setups, more tick throw setups. But the key is archetypes. Do you guys, and this is again a question for NRS and a question for the community, do you want to play games where you can play your gameplay style that you want to play? Whether you're a rushdown player, pressure player, zoning player, anti-zoning player, etc., etc. I want you to have fun with the game in order to play the game the way you want to play the game. And that is important, because that's how we play these fighting games. We play them because we want to have fun. And right now, many people are not having fun. And I will argue because we don't get to play the game that we want to. Again, Franco last time on your podcast talked about, on Wake Up, I just had to back off constantly. So a Bane player, because he used to be a Bane player, that's kind of how he started, and even before that, like Bane kind of, I think, describes how he wants to play. Like he obviously is a rushdown player, he wants to get in, he wants to destroy people on Wake Up. Not in this game. You have to back off. And that's why Gurr, with all due respect to Franco, gets better results, because Gurr usually backs off. That's how he plays Geras. And again, if there's anything to learn from MK11, it's this, guys. We need archetypes. Whether they're traditional or not, we need them back. You cannot have a character who does everything, or we cannot have characters who do nothing, which is what most of the characters in this game.
So because people are going to say, well, that's not true, that people do different things. Take the wake up system, for example. The way different characters knock you down and do whatever can dictate how they play. In other words, if a character has 10 different hard knockdowns versus a character that has no hard knockdowns, well, the way they play is going to differ, because this character is going to be able to knock you down and put you in a different situation, because you're not going to have the option to roll. So you'll have your wake up attacks, but you can't roll, etc. Whereas this character has to have a different game plan because he doesn't have those hard knockdowns. In Mortal Kombat 11, for example, every knockdown is the same. Every single knockdown for every single character is identical. If you have bar, no knockdown is a hard knockdown. If you don't have bar, every knockdown is a hard knockdown. So Cetrion, if you have no bar, you would think a hard knockdown would be something that grapplers would really benefit from. Cetrion gets, or maybe like a more of a brawler character like Shao Kahn. Cetrion has the exact same amount of hard knockdowns as a character like Shao Kahn, or as a character like anyone. So, because, well, you don't have any bar, Cetrion knocks you down, it's a hard knockdown and whatever. So this is something that's a real problem, because there's no difference between a character like Cetrion, who's not supposed to be that grappler, that hard knockdown type character, but yet she becomes that. The same way Kotal becomes that as a grappler. So it doesn't matter if you're a grappler, or if you're a character like Cetrion, or even Jackie. Jackie has the exact same amount of knockdowns as every other character. So there's no real archetype, There's no, okay, well, I can do this. This is how I set up my Oki, how I set this up, how I set that up. Because it's all the same. It's all the same. They're all going to get up the same way. They're all going to knock you down with the same type of knockdown. And I think that's a big part of fighting him. It's a big part of the creativity of a character, to have every character pretty much have the same type of knockdown, the same type of situations on Wake Up. I think things like that make it impossible to have, archetypes.
Well, and again, I'm going to go back to the conversation that you had with King and King Jr., because I'm very delighted to see that, the following. Because in order to fix the problem, you have to recognize what they are, and you have to agree on them. I think we see the same complaints over and over again. Usually to the extent that the characters are, they don't play. They don't play varied enough. Like you talked about, because I listened to your previous podcast, and King talked about the characters are not like individualistic enough. Like there's not enough individualism. That's kind of what he talked about. Again, he's another player. He's been very, very successful with with Batman and Injustice, and kind of wants to play a rushdown style. Occasionally, maybe zoning here and there, and that's the way he wants to play. And again, if people want variety, they have to speak up, and also many times they'll just have to stop complaining. Because, look, what makes fighting games fun is that, for example, take me. I'm a zoning player. I'm always going to bitch about anti-zoning. It's just the way I'm always going to complain about it. But at the end of the day, that's what we do, right? We figure out matchups. It's hard. We have fun. We play for the sake of competition and fun, and we figure stuff out. My matchups are always going to be, the worst ones are always going to be anti-zoning. For Tom, they're probably going to be zoning and maybe people who have armor. Like, that's what I mean. Like, NRS, they always deal with extremes. Oh, people complain about armor because we implemented the armor very poorly in MKX. Let's just remove it at all. Like, there's no reason to have it ever. Why not? Like, you see Street Fighter has it. Even Tekken is a 3D fucking fighting game, has armor, and you tell me you can't implement it? I don't think it's necessarily incompetence, but it's like, what else can you think? You tell me they can't implement these gameplay aspects in a balanced way? Why not?
Well, I mean, ultimately, at a certain point, once people got tired, people moved on. A lot of people still play MK11, but MKX is getting a little more shine. Even Injustice 2 is getting a little more shine. And I want to shift my attention to this. So it's always said that MK11 has the most defensive options. But after playing MKX and dabbling a little bit in Injustice 2 again, and then today I played some MK11, the observation I had was astounding to me. So in MKX and Injustice, for example, they follow what fighting games should be. While you are standing, even though you're being pressured, if a person is pressuring you, they deserve a form of advantage because they are initiating the offense. They are putting you in a pressure situation. So there is an advantage that should be afforded to them. However, while you're standing up, you have not been knocked down and the opponent has not landed a hit. You are entitled to certain protections because you have not been knocked down. They have not scored a hit on you. So while you are being pressured, this is where the most protection should be given to you. And in those games, you have better backdashes. They have invincibility. You have push block in in Injustice. You have armor in MKX, meter burn back 3 in Injustice 1 and 2. So you have armor, invincible backdashing, push block in one game. In theory, if you're going to die, you have block breaker if you need it in MKX. The game gives you multiple options while you are standing. And of course, when you're knocked down, this is when the least options are afforded to you because the opponent has hit you. They have knocked you down. In MKX, if you have no bar, you're not getting up. In Injustice, you do have invincible wake-up attacks, but your options are more limited. You don't have 7 or 8 options. In MK11, it seems completely opposite. While you were standing, I found today, it felt like my feet were stuck in cement. Like I could not move. My natural reaction was to armor, backdash, things of that nature. And you can't do that. When you are standing up in MK11 and somebody is doing jump, 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 whatever pressuring you, your only option is flawless block or maybe like a down 1. But down 1 is an option in every game. But your other defensive options like good backdashing with some invincibility, maybe a push block, armor, things of that nature, do not exist in MK11. Instead, when you are standing and the most protection should be given to you, the most options for protection should be given to you, you have little, flawless block up 2. And then when you're done with flawless block up 2, now you have no bar and you really can't defend yourself. But when you're knocked down and the least amount of protection should be afforded to you, that is when the game gives you the most protection. So when somebody gets knocked down, they're actually in a better position than when they're standing up. So when you knock the guy down, you say, okay, let me back away. Let me not do anything. And that is a huge problem in the game. It's so backwards with how it's supposed to be. And I don't really understand the thinking of doing that, because how can you do something a certain amount of way for so many games and it looks like you understand that concept, and then MK11 comes out and it doesn't really seem that way. What do you think? You've played MKX, etc. People say these games have the worst defensive options, but in reality, they have the right amount of defensive options. Do they not? They have the right amount of options when you're standing. And when you're knocked down and they say, oh, you don't have many options, you're not supposed to have many options when you're knocked down. Is this not true?
MKX is definitely good options while you're standing. Maybe on the ground, you could have a little bit more options because some of the offense really is oppressive. Referring like the super top tier characters like Liu Kang, very, very oppressive. So you'd ideally want to have a little bit more options on the ground. Obviously, nothing like MK11. Like, I don't want anybody to have 6, 7 options on the ground. I think that's completely ridiculous. But I think MKX probably gets it more right than MK11. And I like how King Jr. talks about counterintuitive. And that's like really what MK is, just counterintuitive to have more options while you're in the air and on the ground than while you're standing, right? I just don't expect that. Because any other fighting game, at least that I play, you have Tekken, somebody's on the ground by the wall, they usually don't backdash, right? You usually don't. And if you do, and they whiff something, you get massively rewarded because there's a wall. You're gonna wall splat them. Same thing as Street Fighter. You usually don't back off by the wall. It's by the corner. It just doesn't happen. So I think MKX. To me, MKX is not a perfect game. It just isn't. But again, as I've said many times, I rather play MKX and MK11 because it seems more it seems more intuitive to me in many aspects. You have those long combos. You have like you've just mentioned. You have a system that rewards people for getting a knockdown, etc., etc. You have even more variety among some of the rushdown. To me, and if I kind of may wrap up the conversation with this, and if I may take the people down that memory lane, because I know many of you might have not played Tekken 5.0, which was an extremely broken fighting game. But then Namco released in the arcades Tekken 5.1, which really nerfed everything, like nerfed every single thing that they could. It'd be like, you know what? I mean, in Tekken 5.0, we did really want to be infinited by freaking Steve, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we want, like, as you would say, no, salsa no spaghetti either. Like, can we get something in between? And then they released Tekken 5 DR, and the game was critically acclaimed. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for balance, not character-wise, balance within the actual system, balance within the actual meta. I'm looking for, again, can they implement armor that's not broken? Can they implement a wake-up system that favors the person who's doing the knockdown? Can they implement a system that actually favors doing long combos without me getting comboed, because I'm trying to fucking combo? That's kind of what I'm looking for in the next MK game, on the next NRS game in general. And I really, really hope that I don't see these ridiculous gameplay elements that I've seen in MK11. I know you're doing the interviewing, but I want to know what you expect from the game, from the next one.
Well, first of all, in a game like MKX, the problem was not that, you didn't have the defensive options. That was not the problem. The problem was that when you get knocked down or whatever, you're always getting up in the 50-50s. So the problem was the how it was kind of a kind of overkill with how much of the game was about 50-50s. And they could tone that down. But besides that, they got most of the things right. Even the armor they got right. The problem with the game was never armored launchers. It was that you have situations where you have an armor move that's an overhead that may be a launcher, and an armor move that doesn't launch that's a low. Or reverse. Tanya, she has an armor move that's a low, that's a launcher, her drill, and her split kick that's an overhead. Or her teleport that's an armored launcher that's an advantage. So you have situations where you knock somebody down and they're like, okay, or you're in a situation and they can armor you with a low or an overhead, and you're like, well, I'm not going to take the armored launcher, so I'm just going to take the low. That was the main problem with the armor in the game. Not that the armor was broken per se. The armor itself was fine, but it was always about a little overkill in certain situations with what's an overhead and what's a low. But the wake-up system was done fine. Your options were fine. And having armor was fine. And none of that needed to change. They just needed to tone down the emphasis on just how much of the game was about the 50-50. In the next Mortal Kombat game, I don't think that they should... I think they should...
And if I may just interrupt, a lot of the armor was actually used for anti-airing. For example, with Tremor, I'm a Tremor player, the office, whatever it's called in the in-game move. That was so important for fighting Shinnok, Imposter, for fighting Kenshi, and Possessed. It was extremely important. And once they took away the armor on that, I mean, it was, Jesus Christ, man, it was so frustrating because now you have to uppercut where earlier you had a safe, you had a safe option that you could use in reaction to anti-air people, and that move wasn't even used as like for offensive, even necessarily, even on the wake up situation. It was used like just as an anti-air attack. It's a very good one. And once they nerfed that, it was really rough. And I know you feel the same about Sub-Zero, right? Once they nerfed the Shatter, right? Isn't that the armor they removed Sub-Zero for that?
Yeah, the Shatter. Yeah.
So now you were running into problems in a lot of these matchups that pre-patch probably were a lot easier.
Yeah, for the next MK game, what I hope they pretty much scrap absolutely everything about Mortal Kombat 11. The meter system, I hate the meter system. It's way too universal again. The wake-up system, the knockdown system, every character having the same wake-up attack. I mean, all that stuff I want to see gone. And one thing that I hope they realize, and I hope everybody listening realizes, when you guys look at stuff and you say that would be broken, that's the point. That's what a fighting game is. A fighting game is tons of characters with stuff that is quote-unquote broken. The formula is to find the right dial to tone it up to. Like maybe something that's dialed up to an 11 might be way too much. If you dial it down to a 7, it's still quote unquote broken, but not to a point where it's like, what am I going to do? Right. That's really the key. And do that for every single character. I feel like with MK11, what I don't want to see with MK12 is they literally put certain characters like Melina in the gutter because, oh my gosh, she can't have roll, that would be too good. She can't have multiple size, her zoning would be too much. But Cetrion can have all the zoning in the world, all the mobility in the world. Jackie can have all the mobility in the world, and they say, well, if she had a projectile, she would be broken. And lo and behold, now she has one with customs. And yet, they put restrictions on other characters with, conflictions with why two moves can't be put together, and things of that nature. Restrictions with one move and another, just outright banning certain moves. It just doesn't really make any sense, trying to micromanage the game. And I think that's also what makes it very boring. For MK12, I think they really need to find the right balance of what the knob should be dialed up or down to. But every character should have something like that. Because what I notice is a lot of people today, they want a character to do X, Y, or Z. So if you're a Jackie player, you want Jackie all over the screen and you want to play crazy. And that's fine and that's fair. If you want Cabal, you want them all over the screen. Fusion, you want them all over the screen, everywhere, doing everything, moves from halfway across the screen, and that's fine. By the same right, though, you don't want somebody else to have something that the way that character plays might slow down your Jackie or slow down your Fujin. So what you're saying is, I only want things in the game that allow me to do this, this, and this. And you don't think other people should have things in the game to allow them to do that and that and that. And that's really the problem with MK11. It's way too watered down in some aspects, and then way too like the cuffs are off over here. And really they should be off everywhere. And for anyone that says, well, that would be broken, that's what makes games good. You just have to find the right dial of what do you tone that quote unquote brokenness up or down to. And I think that's really the key. One thing I want to hit on before we close things off is right now we're probably not going to get anything for the next year or so. Dave, do you think NRS is going to continue support the game with pot bonuses, etc.?
It's difficult to say. I really don't know the answer to that question because I think like we have to be honest and just obviously COVID has changed not just obviously the fighting game community but the whole world. So you don't know like what financial situation people are in, in that and the organization NRS. So it's really really difficult to answer that question. I mean they might not. We'll see. I think it's going to be. The biggest testament is going to be if people, the big dogs in our community like Ninja Killer, Tweety, Samij, Sonic Fox, obviously, Rewind. If those people do not participate in these majors like CEO, that it will happen this year
CEO's already
or even
capped
next
at 400.
year.
But I think that's the first major. So I think in general, just because people have been sitting at home for so long, that's going to be big regardless.
That's true, and it might be. But if can the game survive long term? I really don't think so. I think not just NRS fighting games. I think all games need support. That's kind of like the meta now. If you want your game to be in the spotlight, you need to support the game with content. You need to update. You need to change, flip stuff, switch stuff around, give people something to look forward to, and that's what's working right now. But I'm sure not just fighting games, many other games. And if NRS does not do that, I think the game will eventually. I mean, it will not be played. I mean, at least not to a significant extent.
Yeah, I honestly think that I truly believe that Mortal Kombat 11 has about 12 to 18 months of life before we get the next title, which means the game would live to nearly 4 full years, if not 4 full years. I honestly look at it as the first year of the game, it was supported. But this last year in COVID, it was barely supported by NRS. I mean, sure, they gave you characters, but the content along with the characters was non-existent. Armor Breaks did almost nothing. And of course, Ultimate, as far as changing the meta, did nothing. And then money-wise, for the tournament scene, we had no offline tournaments. People were wondering what's going on. So after the Pro Series ended, which was March, and then, COVID kicked in right there that weekend, where everything got shut down literally that weekend, where NRS said, hey, was no last chance qualifier, etc. Then we had the rest of March, all of April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, and nothing tournament-wise. They give us Ultimate, which was a complete joke of content. They gave us 3 characters, and in 2 weeks, nobody cared. And they were saying, hello, when are we... Sonic Fox, 1 month after we got Ultimate, tweeted, nothing new from NRS, ZZZZZ. So that goes to tell you just how much content the 3 new characters actually were. And there's...
If I may add this, I know we're about to wrap it up, but I think Melina is probably the ideal example of the inconceivable and tremendous failure of the variation system in the game, because you have a character who literally has to equip an aerial fireball, a low fireball, and it's just like, but Setchan can already do all that stuff. Like, and it's all
She can't
default. Like,
even use her. She
why?
can't even simultaneously equip her high and low psi because the game makes you choose
Yeah,
one or the other. I mean,
that's right. And or like the because you have to equip also aerial teleport, right? Because they will not let you do in the air.
correct.
It's like I just I, again, how can anybody defend this? How can anybody even apologize for this? I really don't understand it. And I know the Melina community sometimes gets criticized a lot, but it's like I just feel bad for these people because it's just these decisions to me are
Yeah,
just
yeah,
unacceptable. I just don't understand this, man. I really don't understand this in any way, shape, or form.
yeah, and
I just
it
don't
is
get it.
mind
I don't know what they're
blowing.
thinking.
What also mind blowing is in the second year, for the majority of that year, like I said, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Yeah, we got Ultimate. That was barely anything. It's just they unlocked content we've had since day one and then gave us 3 characters that got old in a week. Then,
Boom, boom, by the way, are like apparently super low tier.
then you have the Pro Series that got announced, which just people finally just got. It was over now last weekend. So think about that. The the support ended March of 2020. Nobody got a dime from NetherRealm as far as supporting the tournament scene in 2020 from April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And then in 2021, January, February, March, April, May, June. Now, that's over a year and a half before NRS wrote a check for $1 to anyone as far as supporting their tournament scene, right? Keeping their tournaments going. The tournament scene was carried by the community. When NRS did nothing and said nothing, you had people like Aquaman with the Coliseum, Destroyer with Champions of the Realm, Hot Rod Crusher did his series, Diddle had the Diddle Dome, CGL also had several series going on. Ava was doing beef sets. Foxy had his streams going on. Slayer had his events going on. Vera had her stuff going on. The community got extremely creative to find ways to keep interest, to keep people coming, whether it was exhibitions, whether it was beef sets, whether it was tournaments, whether it was a series. And NRS did nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In reality, NRS has done zero for the game and the community. For when the game is over, I believe MK11 will live for 4 years. And when that happens, 3 of the 4 years, NRS will have done absolutely nothing for the game and for its community, while still putting the vibe out that people are entitled, and the content creators will put vibes out that the community is entitled and spoiled, even though as a paying customer, you have the right to say, I did not get what I paid for. And I don't believe a single person, even though you enjoyed the game, you still did not get what you paid for. And NRS showed complete disregard for the ability to support the game because COVID. Meanwhile, every other developer found some way to support the game regardless of the situation. And I think that is absolutely inexcusable.
No, well said. I think that's a good note to end because I have really nothing else to add. I really hope that um, maybe there's a small chance. I don't know what the percentage number is that you would put that maybe you may get something. And even if you get something, hopefully it's more than just, here, hot fixed. Shao Kahn has 50 more health points because we don't want to actually balance him. Look, at this point, honestly, I just want to. I don't play the game anymore. I honestly want to be even done with the game. I have moved on to other games. For NRS games, I play MKX and Injustice One, and that's what I'm going to stick to until they give me a good fucking reason to go back to this game again.
Yeah, overall, let me just say this about the game. As far as the actual game itself, I would actually give Mortal Kombat 11 as a fighting game, I would give it an A minus. Because while I'm not going to give it an A plus or an S rating because it's lacking things like creativity, character individuality, certain freedoms, certain archetypes, it's still more than adequate as a competitive game. The game works very well, better than any other NRS game. It is more balanced as far as you don't see the polarizing matchups. It is a solid game as far as, people want to say scrubby mechanic here or there, but the bottom line is the better player is going to win significantly more. And this notion that someone's going to pick the game up for a month and begin competing at the highest level is just complete. It's just complete nonsense. It's just not true. So the game is a high level game. The better player can and will win. And it's perfectly fine as far as fit for competition. And it does have a lot of things that it does well. But the game at the same time is a complete failure in how it was supported. In 2021, in the modern era, especially when its competitors get times 10 the support, NRS completely failed with the amount of support the game got, the manner in which they chose to support the game, and the communication was absolutely abysmal. I mean, by far the absolute worst in communication of any of the game developers. And again, if you look at the chart for Mortal Kombat 11, it is at the bottom, not just in content, but it would even be below the bottom in the communication. Absolutely ridiculous and inexcusable to me. So while there are some that listen to this podcast and they're going to say MK11's a fine game, sure, you're right, it is a fine game. But the manner in which the company chose to support the game is inexcusable. All of you listening, you paid through the nose, and you received not an ounce of leniency from NetherRealm Studios. In the middle of the pandemic, when so many people were out of work, when the pandemic was at its peak, they charged you through the nose $40 for MK11 Aftermath and didn't think twice about it. You have received not an ounce of leniency when it comes to money that you pay out of your pocket for any of their products. Yet they have shown very, very, very little regard as far as actually wanting to support the game anywhere close to the way their competition is. And they have shown absolutely no willingness to want to communicate or tell you guys anything at all. In fact, the most news that we have received is they're working on a Marvel title, which came from a leak that we still don't even know is confirmed, and that's the most news. Instead, we're stuck watching Ed Boon's Twitter page trying to decipher it like we're watching a movie of angels and demons and we're Tom Hanks trying to decipher stuff, like we're watching the Da Vinci Code or something. Absolutely ridiculous and inexcusable. The game can be one way, and that's fine, and I think the game is fine. But the manner in which things were done and the business practices used were inexcusable. And I am blown away when the creative director has the balls to make a tweet insinuating that people are actually entitled or feel entitled. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I have to go, but if I may, Tom, I want to give a couple of shout-outs to my local scene. Shout-outs to my good cousin, Master D, Playing to Win, THDB, King and King Jr., and Comatose, the Tekken player. God bless those guys, and God bless Tom Brady, one of my best friends in the community. We started as rivals, I guess. It's funny how stuff changes. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and maybe we could do this again sometime.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Dave.
Thank you for having me on.